All right, everyone, welcome back to the Great Leadership Awakening Virtual Summit. I am your host. I am the publisher of the book. I am also in the midst of a wardrobe change to just spice things up for the afternoon. We're halfway through the summit. We got to change up the vibe. And I'm so excited to welcome two incredible women, both with backgrounds in education, to the virtual stage. We're going to give them a proper introduction, but first and foremost, hello, Racquel. Hello, Kate. It's so great to see you both.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Okay. Now, we finally got to meet in person and celebrate on Friday, but Kate, you and I go back to like May 2020. Racquel, you and I go back to like October of 2021. We've now like been in each other's world for some time, but we finally got to see each other and it was so special. Oh.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
It was
And
very transformative moment.
And as we can see, like, you know, Racquel, with your background, we know like you've been one of our best promoters, and I loved having your entourage there to support us and celebrate your parents. That was amazing. And I'm just
Thanks to mom and dad, right?
yeah, like we've had so much family support throughout this experience, throughout this summit, and it was so great to meet them as well. And I want to extend a big welcome to everyone joining us here for this conversation. You saw it was titled Ghosts and Other Teachers, the title of Kate's chapter. And we left the title even for this panel discussion because it feels so apropos given the backgrounds of these two incredible women and the experiences that they've had that have led them to this moment and to their story. And I thought we'd do something different to kick off this conversation. And that's to introduce each of these women to you through their own words, through their author bios in the book. So allow me, if you will, to introduce and then invite to the stage. Kate, I'll start with you about our incredible author. So Kate is an educator and learning and development professional with a big imagination. Her background is in K-12 education, but she now works with adult learners, including HR teams, life science professionals, and corporate compliance teams, building blended learning programs that are memorable and engaging. Kate is also a certified meditation instructor. She leads guided meditations for small groups with the aim of helping people feel grounded and centered. Theme of the day. In all of Kate's endeavors, both personal and professional, she leads others with humility, curiosity, and generosity. Kate's friends describe her as someone who is truly in the moment. She frequently loses track of time and is fashionably late. Her personality is friendly and quirky with a healthy dose of New York pragmatism. Above all, she sees life as truly abundant. She is passionate about the ecosystem, bird behavior, spirituality, and the human condition. She enjoys yoga, hiking, ceramics, and watching funny cat videos. Kate also speaks fluent French and loves to travel. Some of her favorite places to travel include Vietnam, Borneo, the south of France, and Colombia. She lived for 7 years in Belgium and Hungary at the start of her career, helping write international curricula, teaching children, and building school communities. Kate lives with her partner, Jonathan, in the Hudson River Valley in New York State. Her preference is to clean up afterward rather than to cook. Kate, congratulations on becoming a best-selling author. That bio, tell us what you wrote about in your chapter.
Thank you so much for the nice welcome, Kayleigh, and for reading my bio. It's always funny when you listen to someone read the bio back to you. Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling. So yeah, I'm super happy to be here and very excited to talk more about the chapter. Kayleigh, is there anything that I should share right now that would be
maybe
helpful?
just a teaser on what your chapter's about, and then we'll go deeper.
Yeah, so I've been telling people this is kind of like a ghost story in a sense, and it's about the things that haunt me, and maybe it's to extend it a little bit more universally, maybe the things that haunt all of us, and sort of the change that inspires. When we feel haunted by something or kind of disturbed by something, that often is a catalyst for a type of change. And so that's what I wrote about in my chapter, and I'm excited to share more.
Well, let's talk more about what haunted you, what changed it sparked in you, and you also talk about the mother wound in your chapter, and I want to dig into that more. So we'll come back in just a moment. So happy that you're here. And it's great that we're doing this panel with Racquel, who also has a background in education. So Racquel, let's welcome you to the stage. Read your bio that you wrote as a reminder of who you are. As Kate said, it does give a warm and fuzzy to remind you of exactly who you are. So for our audience too, Racquel is a woman of faith, mother, wife, best-selling author, educator, educational leader, speaker, and businesswoman. And she hails from the U.S. Virgin Islands and takes great pride in sharing her rich Caribbean history and culture with the world. Racquel has lived a life of service as a 20-year career educator and educational leader, and has always been a part of the great mission to help others elevate through education. She has risen through the ranks in education as a paraprofessional, teacher, mathematics coach, district administrator, state director, part-time university professor, deputy superintendent, and has concluded her decorated career as Commissioner of Education in the U.S. Virgin Islands. In what Racquel defines as her next chapter, she has been intentional about living life very differently from her first one. Racquel is the founder and CEO of consulting firms Barry Benjamin and Associates and Infinite Commercial Capital. She is a contributing author in the Amazon bestseller STEM Century, It Takes a Village to Raise a 21st Century Graduate, and served on a national delegation to South Korea to further the conversation on the importance of STEM education. She is also the author of the new book, Your Story, Your Millions, Use Your Past to Fund Your Future, coming out very soon, May 2023. And lastly, Racquel remains committed to her mission of helping others elevate through education, but this time through business and philanthropy. And in her chapter, which we're going to ask you more about, Racquel hopes to inspire women to find the courage to lead and tell their story. She shares provoking personal and research-based nuggets to challenge readers to face the fears holding them back from leading in their own lives and leading in the world. Her candid insights show women they have more in common than not, and everyone has something they are called to fulfill. Racquel, welcome.
Thank you, Kayleigh. Thank you, Kate. It's a pleasure to be here with you as well. And happy Women's History Month to all the women across the world and those within the sound of our airwaves. Yay! Yay to us. Kayleigh, thank you so much for that read. I agree with you, Kate. It's definitely haunting hearing all of the things about yourself and the things that have held us back in our lives. But here we are today to inspire others to step into leadership through our trials and triumphs. So thank you so much for that. I chose to write on my chapter is called Calling All Lead Hers. And so I have a call rallying up and rounding up all of the women across the world who have this nudge to lead, but for some reason are hesitating. So I share with them, I have 7 sections within my chapter, and I share with them in one of them some personal stories, 2 ways, the 2 biggest ways that I had to exercise courage. The very first biggest way, and then the very last biggest way to date that I had to exercise courage in order to lead my life and, of course, lead others in my businesses. So I look forward to sharing so much more details about my chapter, and I'm looking forward to sharing this moment with you, Kate.
Well, it's been so nice to be on this journey with you, Racquel. I mean, you wrote a chapter in STEM Century all about STEM education, and then to get to know you on a more personal level in this chapter and to see you write this next chapter for your future has been so special. And let's stick with you for a moment and talk about those 2 big moments of courage. What were they for you, and how did you find that strength to follow them? So let's start there.
Perfect. Actually, before I begin, each of my sections begin with a quote, an inspiring quote from some great leader across the world. So to begin my sharing of my two biggest moments where I had to exercise courage, I'll share with you the quote of that section. And it says, "The courage to lead. Courage is the most important of all virtues, because without courage, you cannot practice any other virtue consistently," by the great Maya Angelou. So that quote starts off my section on courage. And I share with readers my first time I had to exercise courage was when I was 15 years old. And the traditional education system was not working for me due to life circumstances. And I went into detail where I had to tell where I told my mom, I'm leaving the traditional education system. Now, technically, by definition, that's considered a dropout. So I was considered a drop out of school. But I intentionally left school because it just wasn't working for me. And I told her I want to go to Job Corps. I knew my plan. I had my plan. And I wanted to go and get a GED and start my life. I didn't have 4 years for a traditional system, given the events in my life at the time. And eventually I did. And the second biggest time I had to exercise courage was when I had completed my 20-year career in education. And I shared with all of my superintendent and commissioner friends across the nation. You know, they saw my video that I released, my resignation video, my farewell video to everyone. And I started to get an abundance of phone calls and text messages and emails from them, you know, saying that, you know, what's your next step? Are you already equipped for your next job? I remember you doing, you know, this project or this part of your strategic plan, your community council, your portrait of a graduate, all of the things that they knew my team and I were working on. They started to say, hey, can you come and do this for me? Or this so-and-so have this work going on in their district. You'll be a perfect fit. And it was just an abundance of, I had so many opportunities to choose from. But deep down within my spirit, it felt so unsettling because and that's why I'm writing my book that you mentioned, Kayleigh, because in that I share exactly why I said no to all of those offers. And of course, we couldn't share it here because it's just a limited amount that we could fit into this one book. But I get into detail about why I said no. And it was because that feeling of being unsettled within, I knew it was time for me to branch out into my next chapter. And it's a pull so strong that I couldn't ignore. It was something I've been working towards for my entire life. And this was the time to say yes to me, yes to my dreams, yes to what I have been striving for so many years. So that was the biggest time I had to exercise courage. I would have made a lot of money, more than I was making in my previous role. I'm pretty sure the perks were a lot better. And so many other advantages that comes along, you know, with being a superintendent or commissioner. But I didn't want to continue on that journey out of my home. I always had a commitment when I was finished with my public career, education career in the Virgin Islands, I was on to my next step. And it just so happened that that was the timing. And I share in my chapter, Kayleigh, one of the great sayings, you know, when you want to see God laugh, tell him your plans. And that's exactly what I did. So it wasn't on my time, but I have to roll with it.
I think your plan had to like out somewhere in 2024 was when your plan started, and it was like we're gonna pull that forward for you, and it's gonna happen now. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
Well, I love hearing about these moments of courage and dating back to, you know, when you were 15 years old and having the courage then to say what you needed and what you knew to be true. And I feel like that's so the theme of this book and this summit is coming back to our individual needs and articulating them and then calling in support and seeing what happens. And to know that you were already following that at such a young age, it sets you up for this moment to kind of ignore the amazing things that are coming your way and holding out for something truer and better, which is what you're doing as you build this new career, write this next chapter, put out your book. It's super inspiring. Kate, let's come to you, because you've also been in the midst of a transition, and in your chapter you take us back to 2020. You take us back to the feeling of that time in your life, and so bring us in a little bit more and tell us what was haunting you and what it woke up within you.
Sure, yeah. So I try to divide this chapter into three parts, and the first part of it is really where I'm sort of setting the stage and talking about the kind of the context. And I think it's so important to talk about the context of our lives, and whenever we're talking about our professional lives, to talk about the context of our personal lives, because we're doing the best that we can from where we are, right? And I think sometimes we forget that, like, there's other things going on in our lives that are, of course, going to influence, whether positively or maybe in a challenging way, like what we're able to quote unquote like output. And so I start the chapter talking about how during the pandemic, it was just a very, very challenging time for me. I mean, for anybody who's ever been to New York or has been in New York City apartments, like, it's a small, cramped experience. And I kind of bring you into that world of that cramped space, which was a really strange experience for me, because I was home all the time. And most people who live in New York, they're going to offices or they're going to schools. So it had never occurred to me when I lived in this studio, or when I said yes to the studio years ago, that I would ever be working there, living there day in and day out. Excuse me, I'm getting over a little bit of cold, so my voice is a little bit strange. But that at that time, it was just kind of this overwhelming claustrophobic experience. And in the midst of that, I was going through this career transition where I started realizing that the job that I was in was really, really deeply unsatisfying, and moreover was kind of bringing up a lot of stuff. Being in that small space and being isolated was causing me to reflect on my childhood. It was reminding me of a lot of the stuff that just didn't feel good, and how it was kind of being brought up at work in a place where I felt like I wasn't being seen, I wasn't being heard, and I was having difficult relationships specifically with female leaders. And that has kind of been, I don't want to say a theme, but I have had really wonderful leaders in my life that have been very supportive figures. But I've also had wonderful leaders in the sense that they were not supportive, and they were very, very difficult. And then they pushed me to this place of, you've got to make a change and look in the mirror and figure out what you really want for yourself. So that was kind of the overall context of what was going on. And I, part of me did not want to write about the pandemic because there's just been so much written about it already. And I feel like we're a little bit oversaturated maybe with stories right now of the challenge there. And I know so many people have had it so much worse, but I just think it's important to kind of, whenever we're thinking about our professional journeys, to just place ourselves like in the moment, like what's going on with our house, what's going on in our partnerships, what's going on in our relationships. And that was really the stage for me at that time.
And it's speaking to the holistic nature that we're now realizing, of bringing everything, sort of understanding the full journey and the connection between personal and professional, mind, body, soul. And I'd love to ask in follow up, like what you noticed about yourself, or what you learned about yourself, and how that's now influenced how you're showing up as a leader, lead her today.
So I mean, I think I learned, Racquel, your story is really speaking to me in this courage theme. I learned that I'm a lot more courageous than I thought that I was. I'm always telling my friends you should lower your tolerance for discomfort, right? And so I don't want to say, oh, I have this great tolerance for discomfort, that's why I'm courageous. It's not that. It's that I went through this difficult, uncomfortable experience, and then decided I needed to make a change to make it way less uncomfortable, and to move closer to a job that I really, really wanted, and a more supportive team. So I've learned that I have the courage to make changes. I've learned that that our greatest teachers, frankly, are often the people that are the most difficult for us to be around. I think, I'm sort of speaking universally here, but for myself personally, that the things that I've learned the most have come from the places of the most discomfort, the most haunting experiences. And I've also learned that my style of leadership is really to be somebody that can kind of see through the discomfort and the ups and downs and just be a steady leader. Like I like to consider myself someone who is able to mentor and to be there for people and to show them, like, right now things are difficult because your workload is really high and you just broke up with your boyfriend and whatever. But next month things may change. Like, nothing is permanent. You have the ability to shift and change, and we all have that. And yeah. And the ghost theme, just to kind of go back to that a little bit, the the funny thing about ghosts is that I do actually believe in ghosts. Like, this is not a totally random topic for me. I like ghost stories, and I like to talk about that sort of other realm. But regardless of that, I think there were some interesting things going on in my apartment that just made me feel like, okay, there is something here. Whether or not it's an actual ghost or not, I don't know, but there is definitely something present around me that is like like kind of looking at me to make a change. And I think probably a lot of people can relate to that feeling of like there's just something going on that's uncomfortable, um, that's sparking that change.
Wow, you just got me thinking though of like Ghost Tour, Savannah, Georgia, like that. Oh, that feeling. And Ghost with us. Oh, it's and just hearing you too of like, yeah, you didn't pick your apartment thinking, oh, I'm gonna be here 24/7. And I know so many of us can relate to that feeling, house, apartment, or otherwise, over the last few years, and how much our physical space does matter and is important. Racquel, coming back to your chapter, and I want to shout out to our audience who's here live. We'll be opening up for questions either here on the chat, or if you want to come on camera in just a moment here. We'll go about 10 minutes over if you're able to stay, since we have two incredible panelists. But Racquel, in your chapter, you talk about your network being your net.
Yeah, I may have it if you're okay.
And I wanted to have you speak to the power of network, especially as like you felt the power when you left your role and everyone wanted to support you. You're like, wait a second, I'm creating something new. So talk to us about network being net worth, and also kind of what it feels like almost building a new network as you create this new chapter in your life. It's going to look different than the network you've had in the past.
It certainly does already. And I specifically wrote about that, Kayleigh, because again, we wrote from a space that we're in. Currently, many of us wrote from where we are right now, that phase of our lives. And I was in that writing my personal book phase and sharing my journey from a little girl. And because of that, I had to start to change my network, even from when I was in grade school, when I was in middle school, even during that high school period that I talked about. And I explained the push and pull of my actual world that I was living in, but being a strong, energetic force pulling me towards a world that I longed for. And I had to find the courage to change my network, not give up on family, not give up on friends, but have boundaries within to say, I love you as a family and a friend, and this is how our relationship is going to look, because this is how best we function and can work together. You can't offer me what you don't have. I can't offer you what I don't have. And when it comes to certain things, I'm going to have to associate myself with who I can serve best and who can serve me best in my next phase. So I share here the quote that started off that section that you mentioned, Kayleigh, is you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that's a quote from Jim Rohn, one of the persons that I aspire, that actually I'm very inspired by. And so throughout that section, I share some details on the courage you're gonna have to need in order to be respectful to your family and friends, because they do serve a purpose in your life, but letting them know in this space, in this phase, is just not happening, respectfully.
Well, I feel really good about the women that we've surrounded ourselves with on this journey, and so if we're the 24 people that we've surrounded ourselves with on this next journey, like, yes, amazing. We're all super inspiring in all of our different ways. And you speak to a really important topic for those that are breaking generational patterns, for those who are changing their career desires, changing their life desires. One of the hardest things to do on that journey is to reorient your relationships.
And Kayleigh, if I may add to that, because I think I didn't completely answer your question. One of the things that is benefiting me now actually are those relationships, meaning in this world, from my first chapter of life, my first 20 years, the relationships that I formed, the friendships, my associates, my colleagues, we're still very close today. We're still close friends. Even the ones nationally. And I communicate more today with the ones nationally because we're more aligned in this new chapter of my life. So a lot of the work that I'm doing today, especially in my company, Benjamin and Associates, that's where I engage in educational consulting and national work that's near and dear to my heart. This is such as transforming education on a national level. So it's because of those relationships that I had prior that I was able to call a friend, call a colleague, who know a friend, who knows someone else, who can, assist in making sure that I advance in my profession. So that the network is truly your net worth. Your network truly is your net worth. And that's exactly what's going to help you not only to progress in your business, but financially as well, gain capital and profits from your business, your relationships that you have with others. That is the key to your financial success.
All the snaps from Kate and our audience. We're going to come to you in just a second. But Kate, I wanted to come back just since it struck me as a journey certainly that I've been on. And you talk about the mother wound and you mentioned sort of female leaders in your life. But for those who aren't really familiar, like, what does that mean to you? And how have you kind of healed that or maybe gotten some peace around that as part of your journey as a leader?
Ooh, great question. And I think I heard you say it the last time and then probably just avoided answering it.
And I'm like, no, I'm asking for a friend. Tell me more.
No, the mother wound is it's a topic that I've journaled about a lot and I'm starting to speak about more. And I definitely included it in the book for good reason. That ghost figure really is my mother. Unfortunately, I don't have a relationship with my biological mother. Because of boundaries I had to set many years ago. So yeah, there is this deep sense of sadness over that loss, which is kind of like an ambiguous loss, right? Because she's still alive, but not accessible. And I think that the way that that's played out at work has just sort of been almost looking to be mothered in a sense by other women, which on the one hand, I think is actually a healthy tendency. Like I have looked for strong, kind, great groups of women, like AKA this group of amazing women that have contributed to this book. But on the other hand, I've also kind of opened myself up to like probably more vulnerability than I should have in a work environment, or let's not use the word should, but more vulnerability than was good for me. Because some of the toxic leadership that I experienced in my last role kind of was really hitting that wound because she reminded me, frankly, just a lot of my mother. So that was again, a good thing in the sense that it indicated that there was a lot of healing that still had to happen. And also that it's impossible to kind of separate, like, once again, it's impossible to separate what's going on in our family life and our work life sometimes. If somebody reminds us of an old friend or a difficult family member that we're meeting at work, of course it's going to have an impact on you. I'm not saying like turn work into a therapy session, but of course there's going to be that, that experience. And so hopefully my chapter kind of outlined the healthy way in which I handled that, which was frankly just by removing myself from the situation. It was like creating a boundary, looking for a new job, and then just taking care of myself and knowing that this wound is probably never going to fully go away. I mean, unfortunately, like, that's just been sort of like the hardest piece of acceptance that I've had to, the realization I've had to come to, but it gets easier. And, you can surround yourself by people that are not as triggering.
I'm so grateful that you went there in your chapter, and honestly to hear more on that from you in this session, because I do feel like it's a very unspoken thing. And again, it's not to blame, it's not to shame, it's to become aware and to then take the steps necessary internally to heal, to set up structures that work for you, to set up relationships that work for you. And it's so important. And I'm grateful that you spoke to it. Thank you. So let's open it up for the next 5 minutes or so to our audience. Would love to hear anything you'd like to share with our panelists, any questions that you have. You have two women with education backgrounds that are now, on their own journeys in the corporate world and starting their own companies. So let's open it up for the next few minutes here. Anything you want to add in the chat or come off mute. We're now halfway through the summit. We're like, anything goes. Come off mute, say hi. And would love to hear you and welcome you to the discussion.
I've been so quiet so far these past day and a half, but I just love it that there's educators here. I'm an educator as well, and our team is, we did the book study on leading through the pandemic, and so we're going to now take on this book and do a book study again. So you are both just amazing women, and I just appreciate you coming on. And Kate, I just have to say, like we were talking about in other sessions today, that courage to talk about that, like that mother loss. And I've experienced the same thing that you described. I lost my mother actually to ovarian cancer when I was very young, and she was very young. So it's very unfortunate. But looking to other women leaders for that same feel, exactly how you described, you are not alone out there with that. And also being caught up with more of that toxicity, and then having to figure out, what did I get myself into and how to work past it. But I just want to commend you for talking about it and just let you know you are not alone out there. And so thank you for opening that up.
Nicole, thank you for chiming in, for being here on the summit, for being with us for so long, with leading through the pandemic. Like, this is super exciting to hear about the book study. And yeah, let's connect too on book study around this. Would be super fun and amazing. So thank you for.
I would love that for sure. And so what part of being educators, we're in and out all the time. So this was a great platform too. So thank you. Big feedback there too, that we could record it and watch it on our own time too, if we needed to catch up on sessions. And then Friday, we're going to get together as a big group and talk about the sessions. So thank you.
Awesome. Oh,
thank you, Nicole, for all of your support and all of your kind words. I'm glad that you're finding this helpful, and it's so exciting to hear that you're reading it in a club setting. I love that.
It's absolutely the spirit.
That's excellent.
Well, I'm going to ask that question, which I like, which is, how does it feel? How does it feel now, Kate and Racquel, to have shared your story in this way and to be in front of all of us? Any words that you want to share with us?
You want to go first, Kate?
I was going to ask you the same.
Okay, I can go first. Okay,
I'll go first.
All right. Actually, it's for me. It's reassuring and comforting. That's what I found, because that is the stage that I'm in. Like I said, sharing my personal story to be an inspiration to others with the underlying message of we're all in the same space. We all have the same experiences, maybe at different times in our lives, at different stages and phases, but we're not in our experiences alone. And we just have to find the courage to share that with other women, to free them of whatever it is they're experiencing. So for me, it's very reassuring that I didn't do a bad thing. I did a good thing, sharing my story. And just knowing that someone else will be healed and find the courage to just take that bold step in their life to transform their lives.
Yeah, I agree, Racquel. I feel the same way. It's very comforting to know that other people have gone through, are going through, or will go through the exact same thing that you did. And the more that we can create community spaces where people talk about these things, that, you know, the better it will be for everybody. Because there's so much like just kind of secrecy and shame, and like also just, I mean, as an educator, you know, education is an incredibly difficult field. Like it is, you want to talk about having a lot of stuff to do and being very busy. You know, so there's just not, we don't necessarily intentionally create a lot of space where we can kind of share, you know, what are the difficulties or what advice you have, kind of mentorship models and things like that. So it's so nice to be a part of something where I feel like, you know, I might be helpful to someone else, and definitely other people are being very helpful to me.
It's so heartwarming to have you both here together, like this, the way that, you know, this panel came together and this focus on education and your journeys. You know, we couldn't have planned it. We barely did. It was so powerful. And I want to thank you both for not just sharing your stories here, but to coming online, sharing here, for continuing to do the work that you're doing in the world. And Racquel, of course, we can't wait to support and purchase your new book coming out. And in the meantime, of course, we want to invite everyone, if you haven't yet gotten your copy, to read Kate's chapter, to read Racquel's chapter, to reach out. This is about connection. And if you feel touched by anyone's stories in here, all of their information's in the book. You can find these women online. If you feel called, take that next step, connect with these leaders. It's about mutuality and collaboration. This is the new way. And every time we do that, we sort of call in this new future of connecting with people, and not just like, oh, that was like a fun thing and I've moved on. What if we went deeper and connected even more profoundly with people whose stories and whose lives really inspired us? So Kate, thank you. Racquel, thank you. Our audience, thank you. Congratulations again. We'll see you at the top of the hour for another great conversation at the Great Leadership Awakening Summit. So happy you're all here. And thanks again.
Thanks,
Thanks
panelists.
so much, everybody.